Good morning, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Let me lower this. So good morning and welcome to the Future of Academic Affairs Forum. Thank you all for joining us this morning. This is our second Academic Affairs Forum. Last year, you'll remember that we did this remotely, and here we are today in person and also with some folks joining us online. So I'm Allison Sanders. I serve as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Chief of Staff in the EVC's office, and I will be serving as our panel moderator today. So today we're going to hear more about what this year holds for academic affairs and continue some discussions that we've been having over the last few years across many units across campus about the continuing implementation of the collective impact framework to erase equity gaps for staff, academics, and students. Our day will begin with a presentation by our Executive Vice Chancellor, Elizabeth Simmons, on her vision, followed by a panel discussion highlighting some of the initiatives on campus that are utilizing a collective impact framework to address equity gaps for faculty, for academics, staff, and students, and magnifying the work that has already been taking place on campus over the last many years. So this morning, in addition to welcoming those of you in the room today, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge those who are joining us online and let everybody know that we'll be recording this event and we'll share it on our Collective Impact website so that you can share this with your colleagues who could not join us today and review the event after you've participated. So it is my great pleasure this morning to introduce our Executive Vice Chancellor, Elizabeth Simmons, who will open our event this morning.
Well, it's great to be here with you in person in one of our nice university spaces and get to actually catch up with one another a bit. I'm glad that we also have the opportunity for some folks to join us remotely as well, schedules being what they are. I'm just seeing there's a giant cable down here that I'm going to try not to unplug with my feet by stepping on it. So I'm going to say a few words about reminding us all of the context that we're in the university, say a few words about where we are with collective impact, and then some of how we are putting that into practice to set things up for the panel discussion, and then a few more words about the future. So let's go to the next slide. So context, we can go to the next slide. So I think you've seen this kind of slide shown many times by me and by the Chancellor, reminding us of our vision to be student-centered, research-focused, service-oriented, and our goal of being a destination for art, culture, education, and healthcare. And then we think about how do we get there? And there are intellectual transformations, physical transformations, all the cranes everywhere, trying to figure out when you start walking from point A to point B, oh, there's point C in the middle that wasn't there last week. So physical transformation. And then culturally, and in some ways, the cultural transformation is part of what collective impact is all about, thinking about how we work together in the most effective ways to achieve what we're after. So going on to the next slide. So the last decade has really been extraordinary. On the one hand, we have seen an incredible growth in undergraduate enrollment and in graduate enrollment. And as the next slide shows, at the same time, we've had incredible growth in diversity of our students and of our academics. Here's data on undergraduates showing that the rate of growth of students from underrepresented groups was twice as great as for undergraduates overall. And similarly, looking at ladder rank faculty in the other graph, you see much more growth among Black faculty, Latinx, women faculty compared to the overall growth. And that's great. That's what we're aiming for. It's hard to do growth and diversity at the same time as overall growth, but we've also done a third thing, as the next slide shows. At the same time, we've managed to narrow the equity gaps, and these are showing data on graduation rates, and that's really tremendous. But then you have to think, okay, we have narrowed the equity gaps doing what we were doing before, but we did so well that actually we had to reset the goalposts. And if you go to the next slide, you see this highlights our ambitious new goalposts for graduation rates for both 4-year for freshmen, 2-year for transfers. And we have to think, how are we going to get there? What additional something are we going to have to do, or how are we going to have to do things differently to achieve these more ambitious goals? And I think the answer is using collective impact to make more powerful outcomes from the same kind of intensive work that we've already been doing. So let's go to the next section. I'll say a few words about collective impact. So first of all, what is it? It's a way of working together. It's a way of using a very structured, intentional way of collaborating so that existing programs, which will still exist, which will still be doing the great things they've already been doing, can achieve more in partnership. It's a way of establishing shared goals, agreeing to use common data sets and tools and ways of assessing the outcomes that then help our individual programs, again, be more aligned with the overall strategy of the university and do more and know what they've accomplished because they're assessing it. And collective impact means you have to be providing, I have to be providing a backbone of support to help you gather that data, to help you do those assessments, because that's work. So the backbone is where that extra effort comes from. And then it's also important that the different partners do some mutually reinforcing activities, new activities that benefit both sides that neither could have done on their own. And what collective impact as an approach is helping us do throughout the university is to scale up our research in size and connectivity and impact and interdisciplinarity. It's enabling us to be as proudly innovative in education as we have for decades been in scholarship. And it's going to help us empower everyone to succeed. Academics and staff, graduate students, undergraduates, everybody, because we all have to advance together if the university is going to advance. So this is how we move forward together. And the next slide shows just a little sketch of what it looks like. The yellow dots are the individual programs, and the blue dots are the working groups that gather partners together to help them figure out what they're going to assess and what data they need to gather and how they can do more together. There's a steering committee to keep everything sort of balanced and make sure good ideas from one working group get propagated over to another. And then crucially, there's that orange support backbone, which for us is being provided by the Division of Extended Studies, which has a lot of expertise in collective impact in assessment and data gathering. So we're harnessing the power of extended studies to help us all do better as a university. Now, on the next slide, this is just an example, and you can look at all the details later, but just to remind us that if you're going to launch a work group that's going to be effective, you can't just throw a bunch of people in a Zoom room and say, hey, make the magic happen. You have to actually, if we're going to be structured and intentional about our collaboration, you have to go through steps that'll set the work group up to be successful and have the resources it needs. And so extended studies leads any new work group through a set of regular steps to get themselves ready to do the work, to have the data they need and so on, and then really move forward. And so this is just letting you know there is a structure, there's a process, and extended studies is there to help make sure all that happens in a good way. Now, in the next slide, it mentions that each of the working groups, how do we figure out what they should work on? Right? Because there are a million things you could work on in principle. So we've done a review of the literature We're a university after all. And the literature shows that if you're trying to address equity gaps for students or for staff or for academics, there are certain themes that need to be addressed. There are certain topics that always come up. And so we're using those themes from the literature to set up the working groups. And I've just sketched here the idea that you'll see some of the themes really mostly relate to students. Some of them really mostly relate to employees. Some of them cross over, like the sense of belonging or mental health and well-being apply to everybody at the university. And so we are we're trying to just make sure that we're doing things in a way that we cover both the general things everybody needs and then the specific things that people in particular circumstances will need. So work groups are in the process of being established. We've actually established, I think, the ones for the students. And now we're moving ahead with partners to work on the ones for academics and for topics related to staff. And if we go to the next slide, I wanted to mention that since the student-focused work groups, naturally, academic affairs has been working very closely with student affairs to set up those work groups, right? The vice chancellors have to work together because this is collective impact. It's all about partnership. Well, similarly, in moving on to work on the work groups for staff, we're partnering with human resources because they're the experts in that area. And as we'll be hearing on the panel, their people proposition actually dovetails perfectly with collective impact. Similarly, in working on the topics for academics, we're partnering with EDI because their accountability framework and their work on the Sea Change project, again, perfectly align with collective impact. And so, of course, we're taking advantage of these partnerships. And in the panel, you'll be hearing about these ways that we're working together with colleagues, also some new opportunities to work with environmental health and safety, which is really cool and unexpected. And that's something we learned about recently. We'll also talk a bit about tools for taking all the data that we have. We have infinite amounts of data about the university, but taking that data and putting it in a form that you can intuitively understand and that you can see what is the point of that data? What do I use that data for? What do I learn from it? Curricular analytics will give us an example that you'll hear more about. And then we'll talk about one of the big things that we all care about a lot is making education affordable for students. So the panel will talk a bit about that and how it connects to technology in some interesting ways. So that's the panel that we'll be going to, that will show how these working groups and ideas are coming to life in the big picture. But I wanted to also give you a few examples of things that have been going on that illustrate just sort of another take on how we put collective impact into action. After all, it's a kind of a high-level principle in some way, or a high-level approach. If you go to the next slide, one thing to keep in mind about collective impact is it's a name with a technical meaning, but it also draws on a lot of familiar ideas, right? As a university, this particular university has been steeped in the idea of partnership and working with people from other areas. That's not new to us. Making sure that we use data in a principled way. That's not new to us. Having EDI front and center in everything we do, that's part and parcel of who we are. And so there are a lot of familiar principles that are part of how we do collective impact. And I want to focus on a couple examples of this idea of bringing principles to life. So if we go to the next slide, our principles of community are a really great example of this is a high-level statement about how we should work together in ways that are respectful and productive. And you can read the principles of community and say, this is incredibly important. I need to live according to that. And then you can also look at it and think, but what does it mean for how I should apply that in the thing I'm going to do in the next hour of my working day? And there's a gap there that we have to think about, and we have to spend some time working on that if we're going to bring the principles of community to life. And so one example that I'd just like to mention is that I've worked over the last, let's see, we did this over about a 6-month period about a year ago. All the people who report to me, either the deans and the associate vice chancellors and directors, in various groups, we talked about teamwork. We talked about how we should work together, literally when we're in a room or a Zoom room, having a meeting together. How do we bring the principles of community to life in that meeting, so the meeting is the best that it can possibly be? Or more generally, when we're back in our own offices doing our thing, working on our email and projects, how can we still keep that sense of community going and support one another? And we developed some guidelines for how we will work together in meetings and how we will work together as leaders. And we put them on a web page so that we could go look at that and remind ourselves. And we actually come back to that and discuss it about once a year to look at it and see which parts are particularly important for us right now. Are there any that we need to edit to keep it really up to date? And the meeting guidelines are things like making sure that we will give ideas really rigorous scrutiny. We'll kind of be very analytical and almost mean to the ideas, really digging into them, seeing if the ideas match with data. But we're going to treat ideas brought forward by anybody in the room equally. It doesn't matter who had the idea, it should be treated the same way. No special deference in any direction. And while we're being very analytical towards the ideas, we're going to be really collegial with the people in the room. Because you can point out a flaw in an idea, but be very polite and collegial to the person and appreciate you brought up a really creative idea. Turns out we can't use this exact version. Maybe we could use a different version, and you can support the colleague. And so we try to really remind ourselves of that. That's just one example. An example from the how to work together, even when we're not in a room in a meeting, would be information flow is one of the hardest things to do at a really large, complicated university, right? I get all sorts of stuff coming into my inbox, and I need to keep in the back of my mind, if something comes in, I learn something that I think, wow, you know, that's important for how the vice chancellor of research does her work. I need to make sure to tell her about that thing. I can't assume that whoever told me also told her. Chances are, if it was OP who told me, they probably didn't also tell her, right? You've all been there. So we need to support each other by helping the information flow so that, again, we're really lifting one another up and helping one another do the work as best we can. So that's just an example of bringing a principle to life. That's part of the whole collective impact spirit. Moving on, I just wanted to mention briefly two quick examples that are maybe a bit more concrete. One is the way that institutional research has been reorganized within academic affairs. It's now organized so that institutional research has 5 teams within it, with team leads on 5 major topics: fiscal, student. You can see them in the rectangles there. And the idea is that also data analysts, assessment experts, and so on, who aren't working in IR, but who collaborate with it a lot, who are in other parts of academic affairs, can also affiliate with those topical teams. So then they have partners to work on. When they have a great idea or when they have a question, they have colleagues to share that with. And then they're more part of the community, the work gets done better. Shifting the office to be organized like this just makes a huge difference for how people can do the work that they were already doing. Another example on this slide is the arts at UC San Diego. We've always had just incredible art in terms of performance, in terms of research, in terms of facilities. And we're adding more all the time. But it used to be that everything was kind of individual and the different areas didn't always talk to one another. There was no incentive and there was no mechanism. We've been trying to establish the ability and opportunity for there to be more collaboration among the different spaces, among the different works and collections, among the people and programs. So I now have an art strategy advisor who leads, among other things, a group called the Collaboratory, where the people who curate the spaces and the exhibits and the performance series come together regularly to talk about what am I thinking about, what themes, what ideas, and hey, does this resonate with anybody else? And then it turns out that there are all sorts of opportunities for collaboration that can now get realized because of having that structure of a collaboratory. Everybody still has their own curatorial authority and independence, but they have the ability now to collaborate in ways that they didn't before. So again, a collective impact approach. Well, going on to the future, let me first talk about where we've been. We've had an incredibly tough 3 years. First, we had the pandemic. Then we had more pandemic. We were sick of pandemic. And then we had a giant strike. And then we thought, pandemic, strike, which is worse? It's all bad, all very difficult. And the strike was very divisive and stirred up things that maybe we didn't even know were there. But the future, we're a very strong university. We're a very strong community. Even through the terrible times of the pandemic and the difficult times of the strike, we've still been doing creative things. And we can still do that, and we will still do that. And no, I wasn't asking for that yet. If you can go back a second, thank you. Yeah, it's the problem with the psychic link. It doesn't always work. I'm not, because if I try to press the button, we will be 5 slides ahead always. Having collective impact as an approach is what's going to let us do all the exciting things that we want to do, which now let's look at. There's so many opportunities working together to create research partnerships that bridge us to the community, that bridge us to industry, that bridge us to across the border to Mexico in ways beyond things that we've done before. There are ways of linking teaching and research through new cool teaching facilities, or through working with the Teaching and Learning Commons, or just bringing together groups of teaching professors, for example, from different departments to brainstorm together, and then to brainstorm with CAMSI and with other groups all around the university. There are ways of working on the health and well-being of everybody in the university. So we come to work as whole people and as people who feel cared for and know that the university is going to support them. We're going to be reimagining graduate education together. And we're going to be doing it not saying grudgingly, oh, we have to do this because, no, we're going to say, it's high time. It's high time. We need to get even more creative than we've ever been before. We've done some precursor work on graduate education, and now we're ready to really run with it and just dream in all sorts of different directions. And we're going to do that together, Academic Affairs and Senate. And it's going to be exciting. We're building lots of colleges. But above all, through collective impact, through knowing how to work together, we're going to be able to achieve the really big goal of equity for all. And that's something we'll be able to be really proud of. And I look forward to working with all of you and all of you on the screen somewhere out there in the ether who I can't see. It's going to be great to work with you and build that future, not just for Academic Affairs, but for all of UC San Diego. And now we're going to hear a really exciting panel about particular parts of the work that I think will be really cool. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you, EVC Simmons. Okay, so this morning we have a fantastic group of colleagues who will be serving as panelists to answer some questions and provide some information about a whole wide range of initiatives that are focused on erasing equity gaps for academics, staff, and students using a collective impact approach to widen their impact. So if our panelists would like to join us on stage, I'll take a few minutes to introduce everybody, and then we'll get started with our conversation. Welcome. Right, so I'll take a few minutes to introduce all of our panelists, and then we'll get started with some brief comments from each of them. First, I'd like to introduce our Associate Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Frank Silva. Also with us today is our Institutional Research Analyst, Christine Kolansky. Next, please welcome Associate Vice Chancellor for Educational Innovation, Carlos Jensen. We also have with us our Chief Human Resources Officer, Terry Winbush. Seated next to Terry is our University Librarian, Eric Mitchell. And also with us today is Corey Singleton, our Director of Environment, Health, and Safety for the campus. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. So our first question, or our first topic, is for all of our panelists to ask them to please share an initiative or project that you've been working on that leverages the collective impact framework and how that has impacted the work or amplified your work. Eric, would you like to take the lead?
There we go. Thanks so much, Allison, and good morning, everybody. I'd like to talk about the work I have been co-leading with many colleagues, including AVC Jensen here on the Affordable Learning and Financial Solutions Collective Impact Group. And so this group came together in the past year, and one of the precursor committees that led to the creation of the team was the Affordable and Open Course Materials Steering Committee that worked back in the previous academic year to study the state of course material costs and the impact that had on students. And maybe it's just the 10,000-foot level. What we found was, of course, that course material affordability is an equity issue and it had an impact on the success of our students. And so the work that we've been doing in this broader collective impact group over the last several months, I just want to give a shout out to our amazing colleagues in extended studies, Georgia Kovacs and Sarah Nolan, who have been leading the formation of this broad campus-wide group who thinks about affordable learning and creating high impact learning experiences really broadly. Maybe the second thing we found last year was that affordability isn't just about textbooks. It's not just about technology. It's something that's happening. You know, there's solutions in every department, in every school, and every support service on campus. And so the Venn diagram you see on the screen here points to the framework, the taxonomy, the ontology that we've been creating together to begin to categorize all of the different services that are occurring on our campus. And so part of our goal, as part of this startup goal for the collective impact group, is to both identify as much as we can the work that's occurring across campus and to help make that more visible to service providers and especially to students. And second, to start thinking about the metrics we have in common, how we track what we're investing in these services, how we track adoption of them so we know where the gap is there, and how we think about long-term impact, you know, so time to degree and student sense of belonging while they're in the university. And so maybe I'll pause there and hand it back to Allison.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'd like to hand it over next to Frank Silva and Christine Kolansky.
Thank you. So my colleague Christine and I are here today to talk to you about the accountability process for inclusive excellence and our overall EDI work. I think it's important to just state that EDI work really lends itself naturally to collective impact because you really have to get people together to define the problem and come up with solutions. And so there's this natural leaning into collective impact. So our accountability process is led by Vice Chancellor Becky Pettit, and we began this in 2018. And we have 3 core tenets. And these core tenets were really developed through a collective impact framework. So what do I mean by that? Basically, what we did was we got everyone together from the campus to find out, define the problem and come up with a outcome that we wanted to see. And the way that we were going to achieve that outcome was through these 3 core tenets of access and success, climate, and accountability. And so within this, we also have shared metrics. So there are shared metrics that roll up to each one of those core tenets. And those shared metrics are provided to unit leaders, so vice chancellors, deans, this year to department chairs. And this is our understanding that this is the area that we want to see change in. And these are the metrics that we've all agreed to use as an institution. And then each unit out in our campus is developing their own initiatives, their own activities to advance inclusive excellence, and they're reinforcing each other. And we're borrowing practices. So we produce a best practice document that other units can review, and they can borrow those practices to help improve their climate and their presence and inclusive excellence in their particular area. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine to talk a little bit more about the other half of our slide.
Thank you so much. So I'm the data lead for the strategic accountability process for inclusive excellence. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how collective impact has shaped the work that I've been doing alongside others. So I'm going to give one particular example, and that is advancing equity in the major. I see a number of friendly faces around the room who are involved in that project, including our Dean of Undergraduate Education, folks in SRS, Student Retention Services, the Teaching and Learning Commons, as well as folks within the Teaching and Learning Commons in the Education Research and Assessment Hub, and our very own institutional research team that has really come together under the leadership of Erin Esplidon to bring together amazing student data to really help support this accountability process. So previously, a lot of this work was sort of a little bit siloed on the data side, and this collective impact process and the collaboration that everyone has brought together has made sure that we are showing the exact same data to folks going through program review as for the accountability process. And why is this really important? We're talking the same language, we're using the same metrics, we're looking at the same things. Equity is at the heart of everything that we're doing. And that really allows us to work together collaboratively to close equity or institutional practice gaps. And that takes a lot of people. And I think that's really important to remember about collective impact. Though I'm sitting on this stage to talk about this process, there's so many people behind the scenes that support this work.
Thank you so much, Christine and Frank. Next, I'll hand it over to Carlos.
Thank you. So one of the great things about working in educational innovation is that the office really exists to collaborate with and empower academic affairs to do new and novel, innovative things, to solve the problems that we're facing in new and transformative ways. And so collaboration is at the heart of everything that we do. Faculty come to us, chairs, deans come to us with a problem. We work together with them to find a solution. And in our spare time, we think of trouble of our own to inject into the system. We're part of what EVC Simmons described as this backbone of support, right? We're here to serve academic affairs and make new and innovative things happen. And as part of that, one of the projects that we've been working on is this curricular analytics project. And that is aimed at better understanding the hugely complex and rich academic enterprise that we have here at UC San Diego. We are one of the premier academic institutions in the country. We have over 4,000 courses, active courses in our catalog, 160 different majors. And it is virtually impossible to keep track of all the interactions, all the knock-on effects, all the ways that we could optimize or find new ways of serving our students without the right tools to do that. And that's what we've been working on. So curriculum analytics is a set of analytic frameworks, tools that allow faculty, administrators, Senate, even students to get a better understanding of how curriculum, how the courses here at UC San Diego works. So in the first visualization, you can see this is a way of visualizing, for instance, the flow of prerequisites from one course to another. Why do we recommend to students that they take courses in the sequence that they take them? These kinds of visualizations help them understand the context for the learning that's occurring, but it also helps students and advisors to find opportunities for, let's say, a semester abroad, or for taking a term off to do an internship. High impact practices that in our drive to the four-year graduation can be very difficult to accommodate. We also have tools now to map out prereq chains, intended or unintended. The graph that you see here in the middle shows which disciplines have a given computer science course as a prerequisite. And it actually spans, it's 134 courses spanning quite a number of different disciplines that computer science may or may not be even aware of. And so when you're making curricular changes or curricular decisions for that one course, you need to understand the potential knock-on effects and who your collaborators are, who your audience is. And then finally, tools to allow us to see over time as our curriculum evolves. Are these changes that we're doing, do they have the impact that we intended? Do we actually see over time the curriculum, the student experience, student success improving? And so we have a number of dashboards looking back all the way to curricular changes going back to 2015 to today. So that's some of the fun stuff that we've been working on. These tools are now available to our faculty, to our advisors, to our deans, chairs, et cetera. And over time, the goal is to open these up even to students. So students can use these to plan their path and their journey.
Thank you, Carlos. Terry?
Oh, I have to use it. Good morning, everyone. So the first slide shows what many of you have seen before, which is our UC San Diego People Proposition. It is grounded in the anchors of equity, inclusion, care, growth, and purpose. So the way that that aligns with the collective impact work is it is a product first of collective impact work. We talked with many constituents across the campus before we developed what turned into what I lovingly call the flower. With the petals, which are the anchors that ground everything that we are trying to do together for shaping our employee experience. So those are the outcomes we want to achieve. We want people to feel as though those things exist when they show up every day to come and work at UC San Diego. So that informs all of the initiatives that we do together that can be exponentially better through the work in collective impact initiatives. So that's, if you can go to the next slide, some of the things that we are working on that are either happening now, that are being refreshed, or that are upcoming within HR and then with partners like you all across the campus, is we are going to be recruiting for a staff diversity champion. So many of you know about, the faculty equity advisors and the lead fellows. Well, we know that there's a need. There's been a request over and over again to have a staff diversity champion who can help shape and inform best practices through all of our staff hiring and recruitment processes. And that means from soup to nuts, whether that's a reclass, a promotion, a new hire, just redesigning a job card. That position will help to look at it through an equity and inclusion lens in a way that hasn't been intentionally done before, and to help everyone across the campus take that approach when they're doing that. So advising even us within HR and our talent group to do that kind of work. And we're partnering very closely with Frank and Becky on creating that position, as well as getting feedback through a number of channels, which you all have seen through the Staff at Work survey and the Idea Wave campaign to help inform and shape what that position ultimately will do and how we hope it will impact the work together. The other thing that we're doing, you've heard through maybe the town halls, is we're looking at the top 10 performing departments and the bottom 10 performing departments in the Staff at Work survey. So you may think, well, just because they perform well this year may not mean anything compared to last year. So what we're actually doing is looking year over year, who had the highest increase in performance in those top 10 folks, and then in the bottom 10. So we can figure out what are the ones in the top 10 doing well, and how can we replicate that, right? How can we utilize that in a collective impact framework to capitalize on what other folks are doing well so we can all benefit? And then in the areas that are having some challenges, go in and have some conversations with the staff and the leadership in that area to figure out how to help them get to a better place in the years to come, because something's going on when the scores drop dramatically year over year. It could be a turnover that's happening with a lot of folks, but it could be a number of things. And we want to actually dig in and figure out how we can help areas. And then it won't be just us that'll be helping the areas. This is literally going to be done in the collective impact framework, where we will bring in partners. We will look at data. We'll have shared data that we'll be working from to try and assist folks. The other piece is around alignment and enhancement of HR practices and a comprehensive people strategy for the whole campus. So many of you know you have your HR person in your unit, in your ORU, in your department, right? And that's your person. Well, you should have your person, but your person should all of your persons, not your people, but all your persons should be operating under the same principles and guidelines and ways of approaching things, but in a way that addresses your unique needs in your area. But we want to make sure everybody's working from the same information. And that's another piece that's grounded in the collective impact framework. We have a lot of circumstances where we get to talking to some of your persons and we find out, oh, that's based on the information that was 15 years ago. We've come a long way since then. And so we want to make some adjustments and make sure that everyone's getting the best support that they can get from their HR partners. And that informs the greater people strategy. And I'm going longer than everybody else. I'm sorry, going faster. All right. Okay, ongoing and being refreshed. So we're doing exit interviews, and to some degree, we're going to be doing a version of a stay interview that we're developing, because as I spoke in a recent conversation, often by the time they get to an exit interview, they're too far gone. And we're not going to get the actual information we need. They're going to placate us because they don't want to talk about it anymore. They want to just go to where they've decided to leave. And so we need to get at those conversations a lot sooner. Why do you stay? What might make you first look up on LinkedIn? Can we prevent you from doing that quick search on Indeed? What can we do to prevent that? Because we want to keep our great talent here at UC San Diego, and at least within the UC system, if nothing else. Many of you know about the pay transparency laws. I'm very excited about that. It's freaking a lot of people out. I'm not freaked out about it. I think it's going to be great to help shape the way that we talk about how people are paid, and inform those discussions and help leaders talk about why someone's paid one way and someone else might be paid a different way. And they understand that it is based on objective factors and not discriminatory factors, because people make up their own stories when they don't know why. And so we want to help managers, supervisors, leaders talk about that, and for employees, how to ask about it. And we all work and talk from the same direction. And then lastly, or not lastly, but there's the promotion program to facilitate internal mobility. People need to be able to feel like they can be developed and grow. That's a major gap that we have amongst our employees. And so we're working to address that. And then as you have all heard me over and over again, and you will continue to hear me as long as I can breathe, continue conversations on grace and how that has to impact the way that you approach everything that you do. I will just say this one thing, just because it actually happened to me this morning. Be mindful of what the one little disruption can do to your whole mental framework for a day. And so if you have a great morning, pay that forward to someone. Do a random act of kindness. If you have a sad morning because one of your kids is really struggling with middle school, me. If you're having that great morning, come say something to me so that I can get through the day and still have positivity, joy, and light, because I need it. So you go back home and be able to hug my son and make sure that he's been okay after a long, hard day of middle school. So that's my very long answer compared to everybody else. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry, and always great reminders about grace. I'll hand it over to Corey.
Thank you. Good morning. So the slide that you will see shortly, oh, there we go, behind me, is really 3 initiatives or 3 programs that are administered by EHS, but they are truly campus-wide programs. And so the first is the Fusion Center, which is really what we transformed the Emergency Operations Center into. So the Emergency Operations Center was stood up when COVID first started, and it's made of a collection of experts across campus. We have different sections: planning and intelligence, operations, finance and logistics, and we need experts from all across campus to fill those roles. And so what we found in the Emergency Operations Center is we had this great collective way to share data across all the different VC areas to work to our mission of continuing research and education. And so from that, now that we've moved away from an operations type center to a fusion center, that's really about sharing information. And so new normal has many different meanings. For us, new normal is really three definitions, and that is adaptable ventilation, flexible workforce, and also information sharing. Those are 3 of the big things that came out of COVID that needs to continue. And so what the Fusion Center really is a way to share information across campus about anything that affects campus. And so we have a Fusion Center website that we push out information about anything. So if your building has a fire, it'd be nice to know that, hey, my building, there's a fire in my building. Why are these fire trucks here? What's going on? The Fusion Center website would have that live, up-to-date information. And then also it's interactive where other groups can participate to say, hey, here are my concerns. Here's what we need. I work in that building. I have research in that building. I need to teach tomorrow. Here's some things that we need to interact with the Fusion Center and share information across all the different platforms. The next one is the Community Safety Security Advisory Committee that was started in 2019 at a presidential directive to look at policing. We broadened it also to look at all things safety. And we stopped telling people, here's what community safety is on campus, and started asking, what does safety mean to you? And spent the next couple of years listening to the entire community tell us what safety means to them. And the answer, not surprisingly, was different than what our safety programs are. And so we wanted to adapt to what the community needed for and felt what safety programs were. And so the circles below are either programs that are proposed, starting, or even enhanced based on the community feedback for what safety means collectively to the community. And then the last is the Police Accountability Board work group. So again, at a presidential directive to start a police accountability board on campus, UCOP has oversight for police accountability, but we really want to put police accountability, create a board on campus. So we have a local voice. The entire community can participate in police oversight. That includes everything from complaints to budgets, any sort of thing that involves policing. And so Dr. Scott Desposato is working, he's the chair of that work group to put together for the community a police accountability board, which will transform out of the workshop or the work group into the board. And then we will have a local voice in police oversight. So those are the 3 different, I think, community-wide initiatives that we have. And then I think later we can talk about how they address equity and some of the issues there.
Great. Thank you so much, Corey. And thank you all, colleagues, for great overviews of your programs and how they are leveraging a collective impact framework to widen impact. I'd like to now move to some questions directed at our panelists. And I'll start with Frank and Christine. Can you please talk about how you see erasing equity gaps for academics through collective impact amplifies the work you've been doing for years, particularly within the EDI accountability framework and the Sea Change initiative?
Thank you so much. I'm incredibly excited to talk about the work that we've been doing to support our academic appointees. I'm going to talk mainly through the data and research frame. And I think what I'm about to share speaks volumes to the benefit of collective impact, the strong framework for equity, diversity, and inclusion established by our Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Becky Pettit, as well as the very exciting and I think a very unique level of transparency that I've seen our leadership take about our data and our findings, and really the way that they grasp that as an opportunity for positive change. So there's a number of initiatives that have come together and coalesced under the collective impact framework, starting with academics at UCSD. This was an inaugural survey conducted in 2020 with the Office of Operational Strategic Initiatives, the Office for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and the Center for Faculty Diversity and Inclusion. We got amazing results from that, 44%. We then worked together, particularly myself and Mardestiny Perez, the director of the Center for Faculty Diversity and Inclusion, to conduct focus groups from that data, bringing the data from those, that great, rich quantitative data that we collected and some of the qualitative data back in the form of roundtables to our academic appointees, since they know their lives and experiences best, and to ask them to really look into that data with us, validate the themes that we were finding, and make recommendations for change. And that led to a recently released report, and that had amazing sponsorship from our Executive Vice Chancellor, Dr. Simmons, and our Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, Becky Pettit. That initiative really grounds part of the work that we're doing. We never want to forget the great data and information that we're collecting. We want to use that to push the needle forward and really respect what people are telling us through our surveys and through our interviews. So we use Sea Change, which is an initiative that came through UC President Michael Drake, and it is an initiative supported by the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences. I practiced that in the mirror many times this morning not to mess it up, but got it wrong anyway. And their mission is really to support institutions of higher education to identify gaps in policies and practices and structures. And of course, we were already doing that through the accountability process that Vice Chancellor Pettit had started. But we really wanted to ask ourselves, how can we take this opportunity and the funding that we're getting to really dig deeper? And so we, in addition to the accountability process and really bringing chairs into the fold to share the experiences of their units around equity, diversity, and inclusion, and bringing in these data sources that have been developed as part of that process. We are also conducting a series of subject matter area expert interviews across campus. And again, I see many friendly faces in this room, both who are participating in that work with me, as well as who have agreed to be interviewed, and really asking them to share from their experiences what we're doing very well as an institution, as well as opportunities for change. And I will say something that speaks volumes to our university is not a single person has turned down our interview request. Everyone has been extremely open and helpful and kind and shown a real commitment to making UC San Diego a better place. And I also, my favorite question to ask people is, if you had a magic wand, what would you change? And you just get so many innovative and amazing ideas. And I'm excited for those to come forward in the report grounded in all these other data sources.
So I think for our particular initiative, the work that's been launched by EVC Simmons around collective impact, what it's done is it's made collaboration easier. It's given us a shared language, and it's enabled us to really come together and to focus on where we want to be and to bring those resources together, both the genius of the staff and faculty, the additional resources, and move in the right direction. And what this does is it adds nuance and more detailed information for leaders to look at their units and better understand the experiences of their faculty and academics that are within their units. So it's looking at presence data and seeing, the data that comes from this type of qualitative assessment that Sea Change blends in and that the academics at UCSD blend in, it really richens the data that's available and the metrics that people can use to bring about change. So it takes, instead of using a hammer to solve a problem, you can finesse it with this and really kind of pinpoint it and focus it.
Thank you so much, Frank and Christine. We really look forward to partnering with you as we start to form working groups around faculty as part of our collective impact initiative. So next I'll look to Carlos for the next question. Carlos, curricular analytics seems like it could be a very powerful tool. In what areas do you think we'll see some large-scale changes or impacts on student success in the near term?
Thanks for that question. So we're already starting to see some collaboration with departments, especially looking at understanding the hidden barriers to students successfully navigating their curriculum, whether they're first-time first-year students or whether they're transfer students. So looking at redundant prerequisites, looking at long prereq chains, and what impact that has on time to degree and even just student well-being and confidence in their ability to do this. Starting this summer, we're going to be working with our advising community as they update the 4-year plans, the 2-year plans, all those things. We're going to use these tools to help them streamline their work, to do it quicker, to catch simple errors and mistakes so that we can free up the advisors to spend more time with our incoming cohort and give them proper advising and set them up for success from the get-go. In the near future, we're going to have conversations with both our academic partners and our Senate partners about making these tools available for things like program review so that faculty can more easily show the impact of their work and identify where they need to go next. And for our Senate colleagues to really be able to understand the impact of a proposed change and the knock-on effects and who needs to be consulted and things like that. So it's going to hopefully in the near term kind of turbocharge how we do curricular change, curricular improvement, and make us more agile, more responsive to the changing needs of our programs and our students.
Great, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing how that starts to operationalize in the next few months. Next, Corey, how do you see EH&S's partnership aligning with the themes in the Collective Impact Initiative, such as Student-Ready Campus, physical spaces, and community safety?
Thank you. I think it bridges a lot of those themes. So I'll just talk about some and they'll kind of fall across different ones. But I think one really has been from all the feedback that we've got from staff and students through the CSSAC and then also through the Community Safety Center. And it's really about what I think about equity from a community safety perspective is not creating barriers and then having an equal experience, so to say. And we had feedback from people to say, why is the lost and found at the police department? You know, we realized that everyone's experience with or attitudes towards law enforcement is unique to each individual and has a broad range. And so we've just always had lost and found at the police department because the police are always around. So we decided, let's move that away from the police department, put it in a different division. People had said, why, when I'm locked out of my dorm at night, why does an armed officer, why is that the person who shows up to let me into my dorm? The answer is that's just who we have around at that time of night. So let's look at ways to not to shift it to other groups. So we're really trying to move non-emergency operations away from law enforcement? And the answer is I mean, the reason that we have law enforcement do a lot of things is just because they're around and they're here 24/7. So if we can shift things away from that, I think it's really helpful to provide that sort of equal experience where now if no matter who's lost something, it shouldn't be this gradient of experiences of trying to go back and I want to get my earbuds back. I just go to transportation services now and get it. That's seems like that's less barrier for that. So we also looking at a proposed idea of a 311 number, so a non-emergency number. So in the EOC, over the 2.5 years it was operational now in the Fusion Center, we just received phone call after phone call of just questions about how the university works, how do I do this, how do I do that? And so the idea of like, I'm a new student, I don't know how any of this works. We thought a 311 number would be really helpful so that anyone can call and say, I have a question about whatever. And there's someone there who can answer it and give direction. A lot of what we do is say that here's the group you want to talk to, we'll call that group, transfer the call. But it's a way, I think, to bring barriers down so we don't have people who want to make some sort of report, but don't really want it to go to the police department. I have a safety concern. I don't really want to talk to the police about it. I want to talk to somebody else. And so I think those are ways that we've improved that. For community safety, I think that the Police Accountability Board is going to be really helpful. Also, if you haven't visited the police website, please do so. There's an entire data section now that lists the demographics of the police department, their budgets, use of force, complaints. There's a RIPA Act, Racial Identity Profiling Act, that has that sort of data of who the police stops based on what the officer believes their race and their gender is. So you can look now and compare and say, how are we doing? That's been one of the issues that we've seen with the Community Safety Center is how do we know how our police interact with the community? We have no data. We'd like to see data. So it's part of providing that data, I think is helpful. And then also for physical spaces, we have the annual lighting and safety tours that start in February, go through February. So that's where we take students, staff, faculty, walk all over campus and look for safety related issues. And it's really great to have other people lead. And so we'll let the students lead. So we're going to go walk this neighborhood. And then all of a sudden we're walking down a path that we didn't even know existed. And it's to say, this is how we get to our class. So, okay, I can understand why there's some safety concerns here. We never really knew this was part of the pathway. So then we look at lighting, improvements to walkways, different plants, things like that to improve the safety. So I think that's some of the initiatives that we're involved in.
Great. Thank you so much, Corey, for sharing all of the information. Next, I'll go to Terry. Terry, HR's recent Idea Wave campaign as part of the People Proposition just wrapped up. Are there a couple of examples or projects from that campaign that align with the staff themes focused on erasing equity gaps via collective impact?
Yeah, so as you noted, the campaign just closed on Friday the 13th. That was not intentional. But one of the top idea was career path clarity. I know this shocks you all because career tracks are so clear. So we will actually be forming work groups and involving the idea submitters on those work groups, as well as a number of constituents across the campus on ways that we can make it a little bit more transparent on how to navigate employment here and growth here at UC San Diego, right? So we'll be utilizing the collective impact framework to make strides there. The second highest voted topic was about getting professional photos, something that you think of as like so simple yet so powerful for so many people who are looking to grow and develop and have other opportunities across the campus, and they want, you know, a nice portfolio and all of that. So we'll be involving those idea submitters and some of the information they shared about what we could do to bring here to UC San Diego and make that available for folks across the campus. And then there are other ideas where, so there was a request about increased paid vacations because they felt that there was a disparity. There isn't a disparity, but this is an opportunity to provide clarity for folks. So the actual topic said that, you know, postdocs get 25 days of paid leave, but staff only get 15. And that's just low even for California standards. And I said, well, bless their heart. I will send that person a personal email as well as the commenters to let them know there's a differentiation when people don't have sick time that is provided to them. And you know, staff do get sick time. And so make sure they understand the differences. But if they're just trying to navigate Blink to figure out those differences, they'll never figure them out. So this is an opportunity for us to look at providing information in a more informed way so that people understand they aren't being sort of outright mistreated, because that is an assumption that folks will make. So we'll be pulling together a lot of work groups related to this work, and even doing some work internally in HR on how we can affect a lot of the initiatives that were presented in the Idea Wave, because as many of my colleagues up here have shared, getting feedback from the folks most impacted by what we're doing is so valuable, but it only works if we actually utilize the information. And so this is where the collective impact framework can really help us to be operating from the same voice around data and information to inform people's work experiences.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We look forward to initiating working groups in partnership with HR. So the last question is for Eric. Eric, EVC Simmons recently charged a task force to look at technology requirements within the Affordability Initiative. Can you talk a little bit about the process and what you've learned so far?
So many thanks, Allison. And this is a great example of some of the detailed work happening around the concept of affordability. And so this group is being co-led by Associate University Librarian Danny Cook and AVC Jensen, and really seeks to understand how we might think about technology access for students moving forward. I know we all had to rethink how we use technology and what technology we need for our jobs over the last few years. Students had to do that maybe tenfold. And I know our university did an amazing job providing laptops to students in need. In the library, we've been offering a Chromebook program, for example, over the last year. And what stood out for me, at least in our instance, is that of the 900 unique users we had thousands of uses of these Chromebooks and many repeat users. About 20% of the students who used a Chromebook said they didn't own one of their own. And so I think the work this group is doing seeks to address that issue directly, because I think it's just like every student needs to be able to access books and journal articles and information resources, every student needs technology access as well. So that group is just starting their work. I know Danny would love to hear from you if you're interested in this topic. If you've got maybe an initiative you're working on or something related, please do reach out. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So first, I would like to thank all of our wonderful colleagues and panelists for sharing the information about their projects and also answering our questions. It was really wonderful to hear more about all of the great work that you're already doing and what you're anticipating for the future, synergizing relationships across campus, reaching across vice chancellor areas, and really working in the spirit of collective impact. So please, let's thank our panelists for their wonderful contributions. And thank you all for joining us today for the Future of Academic Affairs Annual Forum, our second, and look forward to our third next year in January. So stay tuned for that. As I mentioned, we've recorded this session, and this will be available on our Collective Impact website. Please feel free to share that with your colleagues, direct them to that video once it's up, and spread the word. So for those of you in the room today, you're invited to partake of our refreshments that we've provided and mingle with your colleagues and take advantage of an in-person opportunity to create community. And for those of you online, thank you for joining us, and we're glad that you were able to do so. Wishing everybody a wonderful Thursday and rest of the week. And thanks again for joining us.